Yeah, eat it.
Right, and they gonna eat that sweet stuff.
It came, Tanya. You got it.
Okay, cool.
I bought you 2 watches.
What's up, Pastor?
You bought me 2 watches.
What up?
Hey, what's up?
What's going?
Do they fit? They probably won't even fit.
How's everybody?
All
We about
right.
to see now.
Tanya, how was your hiatus?
What you mean? What is that? My I don't know what that is.
Oh, that's right. Find you last week. That's right.
My absence from class.
How was your visit with your wonderful son?
Oh, it was fun. We had fun.
Right.
We went
I know
out.
my uncle was driving you up a crazy wall.
Man, he had us rolling. Well, we was in there rolling. Yeah, we had fun. Only thing I ain't like when he took us to eat though. He always told me he got a nice spot. Man, that food was horrible. I said, what the hell is this? Macaroni was liquidy. I said, what the hell is this? I said, this ain't no mac and cheese, man. I said, well, a whole lot of people like it. She got a whole business for store. And then the green beans, it had some soury taste. I said, oh, man, I put it in my mouth and spit it right back. I said, I can't do this. I can't. I don't know what she did to them beans, but they was horrible. He talking about, I don't even be caring long as it's food. Food is food. I just eat. I said, man, you crazy.
Crazy. So wait a minute. Ann and Dawn are in 2 different places today?
We are.
What is going on? What is going on?
Hola, ¿cómo estás?
Hi, Jimmy. What is going down? So, all right, let's open up in prayer. Let me pray, and we're going to get things going. Father, we thank you because you are an awesome God. We give you worship and praise because you are fabulous. We appreciate and are grateful for everything you do for and through us. We thank you for the lights that we are in the world. And because of you, we continue to shine. We thank you, God, for all the work that you have called our names to do. And we answer the call and we get preparation so that we can do the work of service that has our name on it. We thank you and we give you glory. In Jesus' name, amen. I am wired up right now. I'm fired up. I'm very excited because God is just good. He is good. Even when people don't believe he's good, he's still good. Because being good is not contingent. God's goodness isn't contingent upon our testimony. He's good whether we want to speak about it or not. He is a good God. So I don't know who was on the live today. But I just had some things that God really just allowed me to see, and I wanted to talk about it. The experience and what's going on in church and everything else. I really felt like I wanted to share. And every time I feel like I want to share, I'm going to go on live and I'm going to share it. I'm not going to be drawn back. I'm not going to be shut down or shut up. But when God gives me thoughts, when things are pondering in my spirit, I'm going to talk about them. And what I realized today is that I'm not the only person who feels the way I feel, who've been experiencing and getting these signs and things like that. I'm not the only person. I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to speak about it because it needs to be heard. It needs to be addressed. It needs to be talked about. So, in saying that, is there anything that anybody on this line, before we go to our lesson, that you need or you want to talk about that I've said, or you have any added input from what I talked about online? Let me give you a minute to open up about that, if anybody wants to.
Well, I like how you said you don't have to be a pastor to voice your spiritual, give spiritual influence. So that's a good thing. And it's like when I feel something on my heart, I express it. You know, when the Lord puts something on my heart, I like to express it with everybody on my Facebook. Even though even though I don't know a lot, I still would, whatever I feel that's on my heart, that's what I express.
Anyone else care to share?
For some reason, my phone just went blank. I don't know. Was y'all still talking? I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're still talking. Oh no, whoever Tanya was talking, she's finished talking.
Okay. Yeah. I was just gonna say that I agree with what you said. I forget exactly what part you said, but it kind of reminded me of how it seems like we have I don't know how to say this word, have made the church a celebrity of sorts.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And we treat it as such, and I believe I was feeling that way ever since March, that God was completely in, even though it was a government thing, that okay, everything gets shut down and the churches get shut down too. I believe God was in that, but so many people was like, no, man, we got to keep worshiping. But I'm like, I think God is doing this on purpose, because globally, the church has been not on the same page, not so much with each other, but with God.
Right.
And it was crazy that you said that, because I was like, wow, that's awesome. But
yeah, I feel like all we do is want to be around good people, good preaching. It's like if you have a membership of 6 people, you're not traveling around the world. But if you have a membership of 500 people, everybody wants to know who you are. Everybody wants to come hear you preach. It doesn't matter if you've never heard them preach a day in your life, because somebody said that, they're good. They have a big church. Oh yes, I want to go over there. We gotta hit that. You become a itinerary preacher. That's what they call them. When you still preach at home, but then 2 or 3 days out the week, you're traveling preaching somewhere else. And there are some preachers who miss almost half the year from their own church to preach out, and other people have to, preach and things like that. So, but I'm not really going to get into that. Miss Kathleen, how are you? She is on the line today. The Kathleen Murray.
Well, I kind of like the live stream services better anyway. I just feel more like I could really learn without the surrounding aspects of judgment and people looking at me like, oh, this and that. And it sometimes I feel like the shouting and everything is a distraction from the word, and it just seemed like, to me it just seemed like people just do it for entertainment purposes. But when I watch the services on social media, it don't seem like it's so much of a disruption. I just like social media church better.
Yeah, because you have the opportunity to really zone in to what the preacher is saying. Because a lot of times in churches, even churches that have fabulous audio systems, their sound is done to a perfection. When it gets so loud sometimes that you can't hear what the preacher is saying, and the preacher's mood that they're yelling and screaming to the top of their lungs, that they get hoarse and they can't, well, speaking personally, you get so loud and so hyped that you get hoarse and people can't understand what you're saying anyway. And you can go back and listen to the tape and you're like, what was I saying? But now when you're on internet, you have to focus on your word. You can't focus on the crowd. You're not moved by the people. And I know there are preachers who don't even have, they can't even see they have lives where you can't even put comments. And then you have your preachers who are well acquainted with online preaching, and they tell you what to type in. Let me see them hearts. Let me see them thumbs. Everybody type in your screen, God is love. Come on, let me see you type in your screen, God is love. So they're still feeding off of the interaction that they need from the people when you should just preach the word of God. I have a hard time when I'm trying to teach to focus on comments. When I'm teaching, comments and comments and comments, I have a hard time, trying to read everything that's coming out. It's difficult. I'm very focused on the word of God that he has me to preach. Anybody else want to share about the live, if you were on there, before we go to our lesson? Because we've got a good one. All right. Go ahead, Dawn. I see you.
And I was just going to say that I was on there, and I do agree with a lot of things that you said. You asked a question about how many people have gotten saved at a church that we were going to within a year. And I'm not a member of my grandma's church, but I've been going there for about a year. And I don't recall anybody actually getting saved.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That is. Miss Cat, you had something to say? You can unmute your mic.
Hi. So I'm getting my hair done Wednesday, so I apologize. But the idea that someone needs to die, literally, for someone else to do years a gift is like, wow, okay, And I have done Sunday school. Like, I felt God telling me to do Sunday school and not music. And so for a minute I was doing that. And then I wanted to go back with music. And this gentleman looked at me straight in the eye and said, I thought you were only a Sunday school teacher. So I don't know that, I'm like, so white people can only do one thing. All right. So, but like, I so appreciated the live and what you were saying. So I randomly type all kinds of thoughts. So sorry to be a distraction, but I like the idea that you are focused in on delivering the message, and then maybe there can be a moderated discussion, like if you have a moderator who was telling you what people are typing, whatever. It's just a thought. Thank you.
That's actually good. That's actually good. So when I go live, I need to be live with somebody else in the room. Say, hey, we have a question, we have a comment, because it's hard for me to do that. Thank you, Miss Cat. For everybody, Miss Kathleen, I met Miss Kathleen at Abiding in the Vine Ministries under Pastor Karen Rogers, who I should say the late Pastor Karen Rogers. And she plays the violin, she's musically inclined, and we have been connected since 2012. So I'm happy to introduce her to everybody that's on the line. She's with us today. I don't know how often she'll be here, or I don't know her intent in the class, but she was definitely invited to join us today. So everybody say hello.
I'll be back.
All right.
To quote the Terminator, I'll be back. All right.
This Cat is not your typical white lady, if I can dare say that. She's not your typical white lady. She's a very cool person to be around. Miss Cat is pretty freaking cool. All right. Is Dawn, I want to go back to you. I wanted to get Miss Cat up because she's the only person I've ever seen raise their hand. I didn't even know you could do that on here. It just said Kathleen has her hand raised. I was like, what? So that's something I learned today about Zoom. You can raise your hand. But don't saying it's just pushes on the purpose of the whole thing with changing your perspective. Because if we are comfortable as a church, being in church for so long without people coming to the Lord, that is an issue. Not if you're comfortable with it. Not that you, because people try, they try all types of stuff to get people to come to Christ, to try crusades, outside ministry, all these different things. If you are putting forth the effort to try to reach people, that's one thing. But if you just centrally focused on y'all coming together so y'all can have a good time in the Lord, what are you doing? Where's the report of the people? Because the purpose of the church is to equip you to get the people. So if I'm not equipping you, then it's impossible for you to go get the people. Because it's not just, everybody can't just go out and bring people to the church. You have to teach people how to bring people because you yourself have been taught. You can't just, can you imagine if somebody who smoked weed, you say, yo, you going to hell because you smoking weed, you need to go to church. How fast you think they're going to run to the church? They're not going to run to the church at all. They're going to want to run away from the church. But these are the things that we're pretty much addressing is not just, it's not what you say. Parents say it all the time. It's not what you say. It's the way that you say it. So we can't damn everybody to hell and then want them to give an offering at the end of the service. There's something wrong with that. If nobody else wants to share, we're going to jump right into our lesson. Just wanted to open that up for feedback because we're going to be doing a lot more of online sharing and things like that. Are you guys ready? Let's hit it.
Yep.
We're picking up from last week where we left off. The fellowship of the church. Where am I at? So let me see what our last slide was. Okay, yeah. Some say that their experience of Christianity was shallow. This was the last thing that we did last week. So we are on this one. Young Christians' church experiences related to sexuality are often simplistic. It's judgmental. Christians are struggling with how to live meaningful lives in terms of sex and sexuality. One of the significant tensions for many young believers is how to live up to the church's expectation of chastity and sexual purity in this culture, especially as the age of your first marriage is now commonly delayed to the late 20s. In other words, when the Bible days were, girls were getting married at 13 and 14 years old. But now people are not getting married till they're 20. Women aren't getting married till they're 25, 26, 27. And the hard time being pure or chaste or a virgin until you're 26 years old is not an easy thing to do. People did it back in the day because they were having kids and getting married at 15 years old. Now, they didn't have the chance to live a chaste life because as soon as they started puberty, got a little older, they got married. So now we're here in 2020 and people are getting married at 30 and getting married at 35. So some people have done it where they saved their first sexual experience until they was 29 years old the night they got married. But the average person is having sex for the first time at 15, 16, 17 years old. Why is that happening? Because that was always the trend. Having sex at 15, 16, 17 is nothing new, except back then they were actually married. So research indicates that most young Christians are as sexually active as their non-Christian peers, even though they are more conservative in their attitude about sexuality. Some young Christians have said they have made mistakes and feel judged in the church because of them. So when you have your 18, your 19-year-old in church and they get pregnant, you know, suddenly they're a whore or they're a hoe or they're promiscuous, even though they've only been with one person. And our issue in the church is we act like we don't understand, or we weren't kids, or we weren't 17 and 16, because the average pastor who is pastoring right now was not a virgin when they got married, even the ones who were saved and in church all their lives. They were not virgins when they got married. But this thing is shunned upon so crazy that you can't even be taught how to operate in your gift because you're struggling in your sexuality. And when you think about the reality, excuse me, of being 29 and not sexual, it's not even how we were built to be. We were built to be sexual upon puberty. So holding out on sexual activity for such a long time is almost torturous when you think about it, especially for a man. To tell a man, when men back then had multiple wives, so they were active all the time, much more often than women because they had more wives. But to tell a man today who has that same nature as the man 3,000 years ago, the same nature because we're the same body, that he has to hold off because times have changed and people who are 30-year-old men don't marry 15-year-old women anymore. So you're not getting active as soon as you're turning around. So that's a very difficult part of growing up. And that's something that the church doesn't really want to discuss. You would never find a church teaching about safe sex. They want to only teach about abstinence. But in doing that, you come up with a lot of teenage pregnancies because nobody taught you how to do it safely. Because you can, just because you teach abstinence doesn't mean that the kids are going to listen and not do it. The proper way to do it in this day and age is to teach abstinence and teach purity and chastity, but to also educate your young people on safe sex. You have to tell your kids in church that there are diseases out there. You have to tell them that you can get pregnant. You have to tell them, if you're going to do it, be safe. If you, just like you tell, if you're going to smoke weed, please don't smoke weed that you didn't see the people roll up. We have to be as real as pastors as we can be. We know you're smoking weed, but at least because I was a weed smoker, I'm going to give you tips on what to and what not to do. You're in the bar, if you put your drink down and you turned away and you turned back, do not take another sip of that drink because somebody could have slipped you a Mickey. We want to tell you, stay out the bar. Stay out the bar. Okay, what happens when they say, okay, well, I want to go in the bar because it's a birthday party, and this is my favorite friend, and she's having a party at the bar. Do I disappoint my friend by not coming? No, I'm saying, go to your friend's birthday party. I've been to birthday parties in the bar. Doesn't mean I got to get drunk at the bar, but I'm at the party. And while you're at the party, you can let your light shine at the party. You don't have to be all over the place drinking and everything just because you're at the party. So this is a really, really major topic and major issue in the church that we're not dealing with, because we want to stick to the fact that you shouldn't be having sex. So I'm not going to teach you about safe sex, because in my mind, if I teach you about safe sex, then that means I'm condoning or I'm giving you my permission to have sex. So, and that's not what we're doing. So how many churches do you know, and this is not a rhetorical question, how many churches do you know teach about safe sex. It's an open floor for anybody to comment before we go to the next slide.
I don't know many, but I know my mom's church. I remember when I was maybe about 15, there was literally like one time that she took me, I think my cousin Chanel, and I think maybe Jen it was just kind of a workshop. One of the ladies in the church, she was talking about STDs and AIDS and all of and different diseases and the risk of pregnancy and all of that. That was about it though. That was the only experience that I've had with that type of teaching in the church, and it kind of shocked me, but I don't recall ever experiencing that again.
Anybody else? Okay. The reason why I was so close to the youth. Okay, go ahead, Miss Kathleen. I see you.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yep, we hear you.
Okay. I was just going to say the odd thing is that often people have said you could do oral sex, but then it turns out that there's a significant disease vector for oral sex. Like, not to derail your talk, but the idea of what ways are we spreading sexual diseases if we spread them more through oral sex, and then Christians tell people to do the oral sex, that makes it even more crazy. So it's sort of like helping people not spread sexual disease is a nice idea. So I'll just be quiet.
That's a good point, and it bears on what I was getting ready to say. The reason why the youth were so close to me, being their youth teacher on Tuesday nights, is because we had real conversations. There's one day I put them in a circle and I said, listen, we're doing real talk today because I feel like it's things y'all need to talk about. And I have to let y'all know that whatever happens in the crew stays in the crew. Whatever you tell me, I will not tell your parent. I will not tell your friends. I definitely will not tell the pastor. But there's some things that we really need to talk about. And then I had a slideshow, and I had a baseball field, and I started talking about sex. And when I tell you, their eyes were wide open, and all through that whole week. Are we going to continue the conversation from last Tuesday? Because we talked about safe sex, we talked about oral sex, and we talked about anal sex. We talked about everything in the world, from sex, drugs, parties, all this stuff. And they were very surprised that I was talking about that stuff. They got so comfortable. And even to the point where I was telling the young men, these girls are fast. And one way for a girl to trap you is if you allow her to perform oral sex on you. Because you just don't, it takes a man to a different place. And these young 14, 15, 16-year-old boys were able to highly relate to what I was saying, and it opened up a whole conversation, and we were able to talk about not just safe sex, but how to handle yourselves in positions where you want to have sex. And if you get to a place where you have your don't do's and your boundaries, when you get beyond that boundary, when you know that if you've gotten to this point, already know you're going on all the way, these are things that you should do to make sure you are safe and you are protected. We talked about all of that stuff, not all the time, but we had every couple of months. We said, okay, we need to talk about it because we have new people here and they haven't heard me teach about it. So we're going here. So every 2 or 3 or 4 months, we talked about it. We had our younger kids at 8 o'clock. The younger ones that was under 12 and under or something like that, they went to the back of the class. They got to play games on their phones and everything, so they didn't hear the conversation that we were talking about. And then we had from 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock, we had real talk with our older kids. That was every single Tuesday. Whatever you needed to talk about, this is what we're going to talk about. And that's what drew me close to those youth, because they knew that they can come to me and they can come to this class and they could talk about anything at all, from drugs, from feeling like weed ain't getting them high no more, and they feel like they need to do pills or this and that, and they were able to really talk. And if you can't, as a leader, talk about these things without screaming and getting mad and wanting to sit people down, then you're going to lose this crew. Because whether you want to believe it or not, these kids are doing these things. And we have to be able to address them without condemning them, without judging them, without making them feel like less of a person. You out there smoking that weed, you trying to kill yourself. This ain't Lean on Me, and I'm not Joe Clark. I'm not going to take you to the top of the building and tell you to jump off it because you're smoking weed. Then you're killing yourself anyway. Go ahead and jump. That's what people feel. That's what these young people feel when we criticize them and we're judgmental against them because of what they're doing. We are like Mr. Clark, taking him to the top of the building, telling him to go ahead and jump because he's killing himself anyway. So that's it for this screen. If anybody else wants to share on this screen or add to anything, let me know. But before you do that, if people talked about serious stuff, I always had a personal conversation with them and said, listen, I think you need to talk to your parent about this. I really strongly encourage you to talk to your parent. We can talk to them together. You really need to talk about this. And sometimes I sat in meetings where they wanted to talk to the parents. I've sat in meetings where they wanted to talk to the pastor about it. So, things were going really, really well as far as getting them to open up and really dealing with some issues that these young kids are having. Because believe it or not, the drugs that are out now were not out when we were younger. The amount of youth that are openly having sexual intercourse virtually in clubs, on Facebook, and pictures and everything, these kids are doing things just outright wild these days, and we have to learn how to approach it in a way that makes them not feel dirty because they're doing it, because after all, that's what they do in the world that they're growing up in. Go ahead, Miss Cat.
All right, so I love being here, and I'm sorry I didn't come earlier. I'm more like I will make a commitment and I'll follow it, or I won't make a commitment. Now I can make the commitment and follow it. But anyway, at one moment, I was led to lead a teenage group because there was supposedly the church had 800 people. I don't know where they all are, but okay. But in this group of 800 people, the majority are people who are not white. I showed up to teach the teenagers when they needed it. And I was like, why in the world am I the only person available to teach teenagers? Jeez and crackers, folks. All right, sorry. But then in the moment, the person leading it, and God bless her, I think she will eventually get it. Over time, people do get it. I don't impose rules on teenagers if I'm the only one leading and if I'm getting a mixed message. So I was like, come as you are. If you want to look at your phone for a minute, I don't care. You don't even know me. Most of the time, these people, every time they interact with the white persons, because the white person's yelling at them. So I'm like, I'm myself. I'm like, just show up. Let's do some art. You want to look at the pictures on your phone of doing art, do art and doodle while I talk. I don't care. And so then I was the only person leading it, and I'm a completely different personality. If the rules are ambiguous and I don't know what's going on and all I want to do is connect with people, rules are flown out the window. The rule is sit quietly and doodle. If you can do that, we're good. And I think the person in charge was incensed over the way I did things, because then she demoted me. She sent me an email saying, I don't want you leading anything. And I was like, okay. Fine, whatever, I don't care. So the question is, at some point, when do we impose rules on people? If they know me from a can of paint, I'm not showing up putting rules on someone. They don't know me. And the majority of the time when a white person shows up, it's to give a rule out instead of make a connection. So that's my rant on that.
I understand that. I completely get that. As a teacher, going into an environment with different people, sometimes as leaders, we have to be relaxed and let the people who we're delegating to do things the way that they need to do it. Because if we were able to do it and have a handle on it, we wouldn't need these people to come and do it. That was the liberty that I had with the youth. I was able to do it the way I wanted to do it. I had no parameters. I had no rules. It was like, okay, whatever you do, just do it, because the kids are coming and they're connecting. And if we take that and know that I know you're saved, I know you're walking in the Lord, I know you're not going to have my kids in there doing something crazy. So we have to relax. Me as a pastor now, if I give out something to one of you, I would have to relax and understand or trust that you are going to handle your assignment with dignity and with respect. I can't micromanage, because that's what a lot of pastors do, and they get all twisted up and tired and exhausted because they feel like they have to micromanage. And it's crazy how some pastors of larger churches micromanage. They have to be at choir rehearsal. They have to be at the praise and worship rehearsal. They got to be at every meeting. They're at every fish fry. They're at every dance, everything that's going on, because they want to make sure things are going right. They have to be in everything that's being organized. But that's not the call of a pastor. The call of a pastor is to train you up and to delegate and let you do what you do. Because if I trained you, I should trust that I trained you right. Me coming there all the time is showing a lack of trust in my own teaching, a lack of trust in my own training. Because if I feel like I trained you right, I don't need to be in what you're doing, because you're going to do it with the training that I gave you, with your own skill and your own personality. So if nobody has anything else, we're going to the next slide. I need somebody to keep me on my time. What time is it, y'all? Because I can't see it on my screen.
5:36.
Okay, so when it's 6:15, let me know, because we're going to 6:30 today. A direct altercation. Okay, here's another reason why people leave the church. They had a direct altercation or a situation with church leadership that could not be resolved. Surprisingly, this happens far too often in the church, mainly because of the commonality of relationship that some people have with leadership. This causes an argument when the leader wants to take a stand in their position when it never mattered before. So you have altercations and situations with people and pastors, or people and leaders, because they're common. I know too much about you. You knew too much about me. We're friends. We're hanging out. And when we have we get to a level of an altercation that concerns the church, now I want to pull rank and say, I'm the pastor, you're the member, you do what I say. That is one of the major reasons for people to leave, is because I thought we were cool, and now all of a sudden you want to throw your title up at me, and sometimes when things can't be resolved, it's because somebody is stubborn and doesn't want to yield. Somebody doesn't want to apologize. Somebody doesn't want to take accountability or responsibility. And this is a major issue in church. Commonality in relationship as it regards to leadership is a major issue. And I'm not just talking about pastor and member. I'm talking about leader of a ministry and person in the ministry as well. Because as my sister, I think she was the president of the usher board at one time. And because I was her sister when we were like 14, I was like 14, I figured that I would be able, because that's my sister who's the president, I'm not going to have to stand in the middle of the floor as long as everybody else, because she already know I hate doing that. But that wasn't the case. I had to have my turn in the middle aisle on the floor, as long as everybody else looking back to see if it's my turn to come off the floor, if somebody coming to relieve me. But, it starts at an early age. People who get close to the pastor's kids because they're the pastor's kids. And I feel like if we're close, then I have a leg up. And this also comes into a problem when people need to be corrected. So correction doesn't come just because you had a sin, but sometimes people can do some things that is just so wrong on a whole different level, like disrespect. If you are disrespectful, sometimes that other person won't get checked because of the relationship they or the commonality they have with the leader. And other people, it can cause other people to leave the church because of an altercation with a fellow member that wasn't able to be fixed through leadership. So this is a major, this is a huge, major problem in our churches today. And if you haven't seen it in your church, I hope you don't have to see it in another church, because I've seen this several times. I've tried to talk people out of leaving churches because of other people. I've even said to some of you, if you're going to leave a church, don't leave a church because of other people, because you can leave a church and the person who you left for left 2 weeks later. So now both of y'all not there, and you left because of them, and you're not there no more, and neither are they. So, I've always tried to advocate for people to fix things and not leave. But sometimes there are things that happen that you just can't come back from. There's things, there can be forgiveness, there can be retribution, there can be reconciliation, but there can never be a togetherness again. And sometimes things happen that way, and we just have to let bygones be bygones, and you have to move forward. So here we are, public rebuke or humiliation. This here takes the cake. For me, I've seen it a million times. I don't know if you've ever seen it. I've seen it a million times where people are horribly publicly rebuked or publicly corrected or humiliated. And some pastors would even go to use the scripture in Timothy that talks about when people do something wrong, rebuke them in front of the church. But they don't understand why Paul told them that. Paul told him to do that. And that's because of the commonality, that he was being raised up to lead people who was leading him. He was being raised up to lead people who didn't respect him as a leader. So when they would come against him, he had to rebuke people publicly so that the people watch and say, oh, I ain't going to do that. He done dealt with them strongly. I'm not going to do it. Because Paul said, if you rebuke the one publicly, then the others will be afraid to do it. So that's not the Bible saying that everybody who does something wrong should be publicly rebuked. That's not what Paul was saying. And a lot of people try to use scriptures to abuse other people and say, I'm going to do it because that's how my grandmama did it. That's how her grandfather did it. And I was under this pastor, and that's how they told me to do it. But just because they told you to do it that way doesn't mean it's right. So let me read what this says. Let me move this out of my way. This is when something happens in public that should have been handled in private. The separation comes when there is no sympathy or compassion in the situation. People, including children, visitors, and unbelievers, become aware of a delicate situation. It is a huge problem when you're rebuked for something in front of a child, and they go home and they ask their mom or dad, why did that happen? And their mom and dad are foolish enough to tell them the whole backstory of what went on because the public rebuke was so bad. I don't know if you've ever experienced public rebuke, but I have been through public rebuke, correction, and humiliation a number of times, and it does not feel good. It does not feel good. It is damaging to a person. And people talk about church hurt. And this is one of the main things they talk about in church hurt. And I heard somebody a while ago who was preaching about church hurt. And she was saying nobody talks about hurt like they do church hurt. When you go to work, you don't talk about work hurt or school hurt, but you do. It's called harassment. If you have work hurt, you leave your job or you get fired for that. It's called harassment. You can get a lawsuit for work hurt. You just can't get a lawsuit for church hurt. Well, you can, But people don't do it because they're not going there to sue the church. So we cannot say that it's not important to deal with people's feelings and the fact that they need to be healed from their damaged emotions because of things that went on. Now, if you come under somebody and you've been rebuked publicly and humiliated and corrected publicly everywhere you've been, and you said to yourself that if I come here and this ever happens to me, I swear to God, I'm taking my life. What about the weight on you if you decide to do that to somebody and then they commit suicide because they said, this is the last time I'm going to be publicly humiliated in a church? We don't think about stuff like that. So it's not necessarily always the act of the sin, like we talked about last week, but it's more of the effect and effect that it carries. The ripple effect of what happens, the ripple effect. And sometimes public humiliation to one person can cause other people to not even want to try to do new things, try to do this or try to do that, because they feel like if they get it wrong, they may be publicly humiliated like the last person who got it wrong or happened to make a mistake. Pastors who do this have no sympathy or compassion, because as a pastor, we have to care for the heart of the person, not just for the soul of the person. I have to care about your emotions. I have to care about your feelings. And I can't just handle you and talk to you any kind of way. But there's a certain level of standard or a positional, I like to call it unfonation, when I feel like I have the right and the power to treat people any type of way. So even if you're a manager or you're a boss, being a boss, you should never publicly correct or humiliate people in front of their peers. If you have somebody who did something wrong, you shouldn't scream at them in front of their peers. You should always take them on the side. As a manager where I worked, I always took people on the side. I always act like, oh, it's no big deal. But when I got you in private, I may have fussed at you. I may have sent you a text or an email and let you know how, crazy it was that you did what you did. But I would never make you feel crazy in front of your peers. Why? Because all they're going to do is make jokes about it for the next 6 months. It's never, never, ever the action that causes the most problems. It's the effect after it that causes the problems in the church. It's always what happens afterward that causes the people to leave. It's almost never the actual situation, but the result of the situation is what causes people to walk away, because they can't deal with gossip. They can't deal with these people knowing. They can't deal with coming into this room and all eyes on them. That is something very heavy that people can't handle, especially when people know about delicate situations. When people know, if somebody's preaching and they talk about your sexual misconduct in their preaching, now all eyes are on you. They talk about situations. This is stuff that preachers do. They talk about specific situations, and now it's only 17 people in the room, so they're trying to figure out who committed adultery when it's only 2 married couples. So it's either it's one of the 4 of y'all who committed adultery, because it's only 2 married couples. This is the stuff that causes people to walk away from church. Now, I'm done talking about this. Anybody want to chime in?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I was thinking way back when I got pregnant with Rel,
Yep.
going to church.
Mm-hmm.
I was so, Pastor Caldwell did that same thing, and like he humiliated me so bad because I was a teenager and got pregnant, and it just made me feel so low, like.
Yep.
And it's like, he put me off the choir at the beginning of the service, put me off the usher board, and everybody like, why you not on the choir no more? And this, I said, because I'm pregnant, so I can't sing.
I remember Mother's Day.
Right. I was getting ready to say that.
Go ahead, say it.
Yeah, and I was the youngest mother in the church, and he said to the whole church, well, we're not going to recognize and condone, we're not going to recognize her and condone that type of behavior. So I just didn't get nothing.
Because it was usual every year they gave a gift to the youngest mother, the oldest mother,
And the
and the
oldest.
mother with the most kids here. So that was very humiliating for me because I was your sister and so close to you.
And I hated him ever since that day. And I showed him I hated him. I always gave him an attitude and everything. And I felt bad for it, but you know, that wasn't cool. I just was like, that's not cool. And I was so mad that, remember, he took Nana and Grandmama in the office because I was so mad. I was pissed. I was like.
And you're talking about 26 years ago. Something that happened 26 years ago that had a lasting effect. Humiliation that lasts for 26 years. You can remember how it felt the day that it happened. But these are things that pastors don't care about. And I believe a lot of them don't care about it because it never happened to them. Or that's the way they were trained. If you don't want, and this is their saying, if you don't want to feel like that, don't do it. If you don't want to go to jail, if you can't do the crime, can't do the time, don't do the crime. I mean, it's easy for you to say. Easy for you to say. You wasn't in the middle of the bank looking at $100 million and with nobody looking at you. Because back in the day, it wasn't a whole bunch of cameras. A lot of people was getting locked up for robbery back in the day because it wasn't a bunch of cameras. Don't too many people rob banks now because all the banks got cameras. So, anybody else have anything they want to share about public humility? This topic.
I do.
Go ahead.
Public rebuke or correction hasn't happened to me. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Oh, okay.
I'm in class.
But I've seen it happen, and it makes me feel uncomfortable, and I don't agree with it because I believe that anything that you have to say to somebody, if whatever they did, like, you can pull them in the office and you can talk to them about it. Like, everybody don't need to know what happened. So that's my take on it, but I don't like it, and I feel embarrassed for the person.
Yeah, nobody has to know everything that goes on. And the biggest part about that is that these people who do this, who publicly humiliate people, they're not getting on there before they do that to say, well, before I bring this up, I just want y'all to know what I did. This is what I did, and I want to put this on the floor before I do anything else. Because James tells us to confess your faults one to another. So you can't just be putting somebody else's stuff on the floor. You're supposed to put your own stuff on the floor. And all things are lawful, but all things are not expedient, meaning everybody does not need to know everything. There's some things people should never, ever, ever be a part of, period. And when you do these public rebukes, this is what you instill in the children, that this is the way we do it around here. So now the kids, when they go through things and they have hard times and they make mistakes, there's no way in the world that they're going to bring it to you. You know why? Because they sit and they watch you publicly humiliate and correct other people.
Wow.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I wanted to share. I've been publicly humiliated, but it didn't start off as a public humiliation. There was something that went down at a particular ministry that I was in, and it got to the pastor, and I had a meeting with him. In that meeting, along with another elder of the church, it was shared what I had done. Now, that was what I thought was in confidence with just between me and the pastor. Unfortunately, the size of the church was so small. I mean, it might have been like maybe 20 people. That's adults and children. And it might have been, I think the whole church pretty much was a family, because it was the family and then it was the neighbors of the family. And so it was so small that everybody, I think, excluding the children, was in service to the ministry. So not to drag that along, but eventually I just started to feel like everybody knew, because I went probably about after that whole thing went down, I think I maybe went for like a month, and then I just left. I didn't even say nothing. I just left because I felt humiliated and I felt outed, because I'm just getting the vibe. Sometimes people don't have to say anything. Sometimes you just know that the information is being shared with other people, and you just watch how they treat you afterwards. Mm-hmm. Watch how they talk to you. Watch how they talk about you. Listen to how they, how things just shift from one thing to another. And it's just not cool. Yeah.
Anybody else? Chime on in.
Hey, this is Ann. So I, like James, went to a very tiny church where pretty much everybody was family, to the point where I felt like I was a part of family too, but clearly I was not.
Talk about
and there was a situation that happened, and I won't say it was public rebuke, but I guess it kind of was, except I wasn't present for the public rebuke. So a situation had happened, and it was really it was personal, but the pastor knew what was going on, and then he basically brought it to the entire church and really told the entire church everything that happened while I wasn't even there, to the point where I found out about it by somebody who didn't even go to the church. We had a meeting with my spiritual mom, and she brought it to me, and she really like corrected me in a sweet way, letting me know the things that I did wrong, but that basically behind my back, everybody at the church already knew. And then apparently they all were offended by a personal decision that I made that affected them not at all, but everybody apparently was offended by it. And the pastor was like, well, if you come back, you have to apologize to the entire church. After we had a meeting and I apologized to the pastor personally, we had a meeting, and then he's like, well, if you come back, now you got to apologize to the whole church, when the church wouldn't even know if you hadn't brought it up to everybody and told them when it wasn't even their business or their concern. So I'm still getting over it. It just happened recently, like, I don't know, last year. I think it happened in 2019. So yeah, I'm praying for everybody over there, because I feel like it was a cult. So that's it.
We gonna get into a little bit of that on another day. I think Miss Kathleen has her hand up. I gotta pay attention to this hand. I think she got her hand up. Miss Kat, you trying to say something?
How do you even put the hand up? Because I don't see it.
I have no idea. I have no
I don't
clue.
even see it.
You gotta click the more.
Yeah.
Huh?
You gotta click the more, and it has.
Can people hear me?
Yeah, we hear you. All right, so we know. Click the more, and the more says. I don't have that in my. Or probably because I'm.
If you click on chat, before you chat, it'll say raise hand, right? No.
Oh, well, I probably don't have that because I'm the host.
Oh, right. The host wouldn't raise their hand.
Right. So it's probably everybody else who has that. All right, go ahead, Miss Kat.
All right. So you guys are stirring up a lot in me. But the whole point of why I taught Sunday school for years is that it's quite possible that I have autism, which is a whole nother can of worms, rabbit hole, and a pine tree to climb when you get needles on you. But the point is, because of my autism, there are moments where if I don't have my helmet on, I won't react well. And so at one point I was playing violin, and I was a popular person because a lot of old people like the violin, and they were switching from like an old people joint to a praise music, and the old people didn't like the praise music, but they liked the violin. I had no idea. I didn't care. I mean, I wasn't there to, do that, but, get a following or whatever. So I didn't know that the violin was popular. So, the music minister was away one week, and we had a rehearsal, and I'll say Miss Sally. It's not her name. Miss Sally was not there at rehearsal, but she showed up and she wanted to lead the group on the Sunday. It was awkward. Like, why in the world does she think she can lead the group? Like, what is going on here? And I was just baffled. Plus, I play by ear. I also read, and they have these guitar charts. I don't read guitar charts. So the whole story is going crazier and crazier. The whole thing descended into some wacky situation. And so on top of that, my husband had a migraine. He never got a migraine before in his life. And I had to leave for church. And I was concerned about my husband. I got there late. Well, I got there 30 seconds before the service started. And I nearly tripped on some wires, but I'm a cross-country runner, and I'm almost a parkour runner, not quite on jumping, but I'm pretty agile. And she was like sniping at me the entire service, like, don't trip, and don't, make sure you read the music, and I was like, who made you, leader over me? And I didn't react well at the end. So they had a meeting without me, and then I was just like, all these other people got involved. It was like jacked up beyond crazy. And that happened in 2009, which is the whole reason why I was just teaching Sunday school for a minute, because I was like, I don't want to go through that again, where someone else is breaking every rule ever. And I'm doing like nothing. And then I'm the one that is supposed to apologize, or I don't know. And then that's why it was such a refreshing time to meet with Miss Tawanda, because Pastor Tawanda's focus on Pastor Tawanda's gift. If I play by ear, if I read the guitar chart, if I read off of someone's forehead, she's not concerned because she's so concerned about her gift. But that one woman, that hurt for years. And I didn't know. Now, if I really am autistic, that makes sense. That was an autistic reaction. And that's all.
That goes on to we'll talk about what Ann was saying, where they had a whole meeting with a bunch of people about something that happened with you and with them that all these other people didn't need to talk about. So people have their various reasons for public rebuke. And sometimes I have to go here. Sometimes pastors would do things because they know that's what will make you leave. It's sad to say, but they know, some pastors know their people, and they know, I know how to get them out of here. I know how to do it. I know what to do that'll make them move and make them leave, make them sit down because they want to make room. When you have somebody sometimes who, and this is not about me, but sometimes you have. All right,
I'm sorry, I gotta go to work, y'all.
I know, it must be 6 o'clock. All right.
Yeah, 6 o'clock. All right, God bless y'all.
All right, see you next week.
All right, see you next week.
I'm gonna talk about me because I think it's easier if I talk about me. I've been in a church years ago where the people felt like I should have been the pastor, or I should be the pastor, because the pastor wasn't there half the time anyway. And they felt like that my teaching and my preaching were more advanced or intellectual than the pastor. So the pastor wind up doing something because he knows me. He knew me, and he knew that that's something I wouldn't stand for if you start teaching and preaching things that are not the word of God. But he knew what he needed to do to make me leave without me saying a word. After that Sunday that something went down, I packed everything I had at that church and I left. I packed it all. And there were people who were looking, they said, I already know what you're doing and I already know why. Please keep in contact. So some pastors, they know what to do to get you out of here because they know certain things you're not going to accept. So, and that was a major thing for me. That was quite a few years ago. But I ended that service and I took all of my things that day. I didn't leave nothing behind, so I wasn't coming back to pick up nothing, because I said, you know what, this is it. This is it. I'm done. When you get to that place, you get to that place. All right, Miss Cat, I'm gonna go to you, and then I'm gonna bang it out for a good 15 minutes.
All right, so just 2 seconds. I didn't know that people wanted me to stay, and I only showed up once a month to play piano for the children's choir because I was playing piano for the children's choir. And the pastor's wife was furious at me for leaving, and I was dumbfounded. How would you think I would stay after you did such a big humiliation where the other person was never rebuked for going off on me and assuming a leadership role when she wasn't even in rehearsal? I didn't know her from a can of paint. So that was like really weird. But yeah, I look forward to the rest of your teaching.
That I'm gonna hit that because I'm glad you said that, because I personally seen it all the time, how one person gets rebuked but the other person doesn't, and they did the same thing, or they were both part of a situation. For instance, when we were growing up, it was heard, because I really haven't experienced this, but I heard that when young women got pregnant, they sat the woman down, but they didn't sit the man down. So there were two different, there was a punishment for the woman, that's because she shows, but she didn't get pregnant by herself. So all throughout the years, especially in most recent years, you can see, if you're paying attention, people who you are watching them do stuff that's crazy. You are literally watching them, and everybody else is watching them, but they are never, ever, ever corrected. And you know they're not corrected because they continue to do the same thing. I don't have to see you be corrected, but when you are truly corrected, there's a result that comes behind that. There's a result. If public rebuke has a result, then private correction also has a result. So that's all I got to say about that. All right, so here we go. We get into the bulk of our lesson. So we made ecclesia, which is the church, a building. We made the church a building. It shouldn't have become part of Christian culture either. It's more than a mistranslation, but it represents a misdirection. So when we say we're going to church, oh, we're going to church, oh, church was popping, church was the bomb, oh, you can't disrespect the church. We're all directing all of that to a particular place. So it's not just a mistranslation of ecclesia, which is supposed to be us, the body of Christ, but it represents a misdirection. So now the actual building becomes a holy place. When God is different from the temple, it's different from the tabernacle, where God dwelt in the temple. His spirit dwelt in the tabernacle. But now we are the church. We are the temple of the Holy Ghost. So the Spirit of God dwells inside of us. So the building is not really of much importance, because the church can worship anywhere. We don't have to be in the building to be the church. Perfecting Praise Ministries, we are the church. We're not even in the building now. We don't have the building, but we are the church. So I think part of what God is doing, even in this pandemic, is getting the focus off of the building, because people have placed high regard on the building. You can't play this certain music in the building. You can't do this in the building. You can't have that in the building, because the building is a sacred place. No, my friend. You are the sacred place. It doesn't matter if you're in the church building, a funeral parlor, a cafeteria. You can be in Starbucks, as long as you're doing the will of the Lord. Wherever you are, the church has decided to gather. The fellowship is not in the place. The fellowship is in the people. All right, let me read on. If we want people to stop leaving the church, if we want Christianity to be irresistible again to the world, then maybe it's time to take another look at the movement Jesus started over 2,000 years ago. So my question, which is, rhetorical, what was it that made Jesus so irresistible? What was it that made people run and flock to get to this church, to want to be a part of this gathering or this following? Because 2,000 years ago, it was a following. Christians were people who followed Christ. They were of Christ. So they were Christians. It was a derogatory term. It was the same as white people calling black people niggers. That's what Christian is. They call all their Christians. That means they were speaking foul language against you. So I don't consider myself a Christian. I'm a believer. I'm a believer because Christian doesn't have any positive vibe to it. It's the same way we shouldn't call our sons niggas. Come in, nigga. No, that's not what we should do. We are believers in the Most High God. We are believers of the Messiah, Jesus Christ. We need to take a look and figure out, what is it, Lord, that you did? What is it that Paul did? What is it that Peter did that 3,000 people got saved in one day? What was that word like? What was that sermon like? Where people was like, oh, I gotta have this Jesus. We have services where I don't know the last time I've been in a place where I've seen 20 people since Billy Graham, that I've seen people run into the altar. When Billy Graham was doing crusades, tens of thousands of people were getting saved in one night. We have these things where we have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people, and we'll have 2 souls get saved, and it's 5,000 people there, or 500 people, and we got 2 souls. Yes, we're excited about the 2 souls, but how much work did we really do if we put together this grander event and 2 people got saved? But we had a good time. We had a shouting good time. We sang the best songs. We brought in the most important preachers, but people didn't get saved. Another, I see it say 2 participants. All right, give me a second. Another issue with that is people who are preaching, they don't know how to preach to large crowds of people. They don't know how to preach to unsaved people. So many people know how to preach to the saved, but they don't know how to present the gospel to the unsaved. All right, James, I'm hitting you. Go ahead,
Okay.
James.
Okay.
I like this hand raising thing.
Your question, I found it. Your question was, how did Jesus, what is it that he did? I really think that it was love. I really think that it was just, he was really showing who God really is. Because Jesus said, if you've seen me, then you've seen the Father. And everything that he's done was all a reflection of love. From his parables to when he delivered Mary Magdalene. He saw her getting ready to get stoned and said, he who's without sin cast the first stone. When they all kind of got checked and walked away, lifted her up and said, you are forgiven. Now go and sin no more. He didn't say, don't do this again, or I'm not going to come back to save you next time. She didn't even ask. She was probably trying to figure out who he was. And so when he said, go and, you're forgiven, go and sin no more, I think he was really just saying, I've forgiven you. Like you're I've created, you belong to me. So just live your best life. Don't keep going to the things. Don't keep going back to the things that's going to cause you to be in this dirt. Because I freed you from this dirt. And I think that even in his parables, from the woman with the lost coin to the prodigal son to the everything was always a reflection of God's love for his creation, God's love for us. Even when he was ministering to the disciples and he said, look at the birds, like you see they're taken care of. Doesn't God love you even that much more? So why do you worry about what's coming the next day? Because my Father in heaven is really, he's taking care of you just like he takes care of the birds. So everything was always about love. And I think as, what the church has done over time, and here it is with the culture, with the church privilege, where we look at it like, okay, well, he loves me more because my life was seemingly cleaner than yours. And so now that you look a little bit dirty, I can look down on you because you really don't know who it is that loves me. And it's messed up. Like and I firmly believe that's where we're at now, which is why I believe God shut down the churches, because he's probably like, look, I've had enough of this. Get back, just get back.
We lost our focus. The church has been left in the balance. The purpose have been abandoned. Go on, Miss Kathleen. I see your hand up. Let me lower your hand. I done figured out how to lower people's hands. It's amazing. Thank you, Miss Kathleen. Taught us how to use the dog.
Oh, I'm sorry for not lowering my hand. I'm a little verklempt, but I will make some screenshots on how to raise the hand if somebody needs that. But I appreciate all of you. Thank you for sharing, James. I actually, at one point in the teenager class, I was talking about my dead older brother. He had AIDS. It was a nightmare. He was a sex addict, but that's a whole nother topic. But the point is that this one girl kept interrupting me. She had questions. Here's the first white lady who's willing to answer us about anything and talk about my older brother, because she had a stepbrother who was gay and she was worried. And we had this lengthy conversation. And then the leader came by and said, you need to stop talking about that. That's a sad topic. And I was like, really? You think that this urban crowd, the saddest thing they're going to think about is my dead brother? Oh, please, enough of that. But that whole thing about not really having a perspective and a frame of mind and forgetting that you didn't choose me, I chose you. Leave your gift at the altar. Don't brag about your gift. There's like so many Bible verses to back up what James was saying. So I really appreciate that. Thank you. I'll lower my hand. Sorry.
Cool.
Pastor, we're at 6:16.
Okay. Thank you so much. 6:16. Okay, cool. So let's work on wrapping up, because I think we've dealt with some really cool stuff today. I mean, we really dealt with some stuff. Now, this is the first thing on your paper. So we have all of the offices. Are we going to get into that? I don't know. Let me see. No, we're not getting into the offices. So the exaltation of God, I want you guys to go through that, because we're going to hit that first thing next week. Oh, Lord, before I forget, next Sunday, we are at Ann's house for home fellowship. So Ann's going to give us the address and everything. So those of you who are not in Philly will still be on Zoom, but we'll be there at Ann's house for home fellowship. And that's not a big party or anything like that, but we want to start coming together a little more often for teaching. So if you have a desire to do a home fellowship, wherever you are, even in Ohio, I don't know how many people might make it, but we can definitely plan a home fellowship everywhere. I know I'm going to go see my sister before the end of the year, and if I'm going to be there on a Sunday, I will be doing class from her spot, from her home. So Ann's house next Sunday for our discipleship class from 5 to 6:30. Everybody else will be online. So the exaltation of God, I want you guys to go through that and get your questions ready, because we're getting ready to get into the bulk of this lesson. Also, since we're talking so much about the church, we have a class called Church versus Kingdom. Because we're dealing so much with the church and we're already on the church, I'm just going to combine the two classes with Purpose of Fellowship of the Church and Church versus Kingdom. I'm going to just combine them together, because I'm not going to have to talk about the church in that class. I'll just have to talk about kingdom. So I might as well just talk about kingdom right after this class. So we'll be knocking out that class along with this one. So this is now become like a 2-part class. So instead of having 12 classes, we now have 11 classes. So, it's better, instead of coming back after 4 classes to talk about church versus kingdom. I think we should just knock it all out now, so we can have that comparison of church and kingdom. So next week, when we get to ends, I have already printed them out. But for Tanya and Lamar, I'll be sending your extra copies for the work. I already got them packaged out. Just got to put them in the mail for the kingdom part of the church versus kingdom. I mean, stop sharing this because we're not going to get into that because that's going to bring us into something else. But what I do want to share before we get off of here is one more reason why people leave the church. And that main reason is rejection. A lot of people leave churches, several churches, they leave here, leave there, because their gift is rejected. Sometimes people don't believe where people are gifted. Also, we have churches, like a lot of Baptist churches, they don't necessarily believe in the operation of the prophetic or the speaking in tongues. They don't believe that all the time. Not all of them, but for the majority of being a Baptist and grown up Baptist, that's not what they believe. And when people come there and their gift is prophecy, they have the gift of prophecy or the gift of the word of knowledge or the gift of the word of wisdom, and they start activating their gift, they are kind of shoved to the side or kind of shut down and pressed down. And people have the gift of administration, they're not really used as often because in the Baptist church, either you sing, you usher, you cook, you preach, or you teach. All of those other gifts are not always in play when it comes to a lot of these older Methodist and Protestant churches. They're not really operating like that. So you can come and be gifted all over the place, but then have you may be homosexual. So you and your gift are rejected because of your lifestyle struggle. You can be a gossiper, but your gift to be stripped down. You can preach, but because you gossip, we not having that here. You need to learn how to shut your mouth in order to open it. I mean, I've heard pastors say some of the craziest stuff. So rejection causes people to keep moving from place to place. And the sad part about it is they're moving from place to place. They keep they keep being drawn to the same type of churches that keep doing the same things. How do I know? Because I've been through it. Going from these different churches and this church and that church and that church, drawn to the same type of people who keep rejecting me. It's very common even for women and men in relationships to be drawn to the same type of people for relationships and deal with the same things. A lot of women who went through domestic violence may be beat up by multiple different partners because those are the type of men that they're drawn to. But it comes to a point where your cycle has to break. But God is breaking the cycle of a lot of this foolishness through the pandemic. People are feeling welcome in the church. They don't call people church hoppers now, but you can, on any given Sunday, you can go to 10 different churches, but you're not considered a church hopper. You may give your money to one particular church, but you done been to 16 different churches. When this whole pandemic started, I was in everybody's church. I was clicking on everybody's live. Well, what y'all talking about? Well, what they doing? And if it's anything that remotely looked like the church, the scenery that I came from, I don't want to watch it. I liked watching the pastors that were sitting in their home office and they were just teaching. I'm not saying anything wrong with it, but I wasn't necessarily gung-ho about watching the pastors that go all the way to their empty church buildings to preach a message in front of an empty sanctuary. There's nothing wrong with it, but I just don't feel like we need to waste that much time. You can do whatever you want to do. I'm not saying don't do it. As soon as I seen that, I was like, church, I don't want to watch that. So we all have, God is shifting us and totally shifting our perspective. Even those of us who've been in church for years and years. There's people I know who've been in church for 50 years. I was like, you know what? I'm tired of doing church. I don't want to do church no more. There's a reason why people are saying that. And that's what we need to figure out, the root of the problem, the reason people are leaving, and stop doing those things that make people leave the church. Because our issue as church members, as church leaders, is that we think that we should be able to control the in and out, control the revolving door, control the atmosphere in which worship happens. But that's not the case. Sometimes we have to pull back and let other people operate where they're gifted. Because as a pastor, you have to be tired of preaching and teaching all the time. There has to come a point where other people who are gifted have to learn how to use their gift. In other words, I have to sit down sometimes so that you can learn how to operate in your gift. And if you have any pastors who are preaching 52 Sundays a year, that tells me that you don't have any preachers coming up behind you, because somebody should be in training preaching on a Sunday morning. But that's where the life is. The life is in the preaching on Sunday morning. You know, when we were growing up, there wasn't 3 and 4 services. But there are major services, and then there are services that are the early morning services, which the early morning services don't have as much as the major service. So if you were preaching, you didn't typically want to preach at the early morning service because there wasn't as many people as the main service. And this is the type of foolishness that is inexistent anymore, because everybody is everywhere in every service all the time. So God is doing an amazing thing through this pandemic, and we have to see the good in what God is doing, or what God is allowing to happen. Because this pandemic did not take God by surprise, like, oh my, it's a pandemic. What am I going to do for my kids? What am I going to do for the saints? What am I going to do for my people? No, God is saying, open your eyes and pay attention. And if you're opening your eyes and paying attention, he is showing you the way. He is showing you the way. And that's all I got for today, guys. I'm just so excited about ministry right now. I'm extremely excited about God and ministry and teaching and everything. And I'm so excited about what God is getting ready to do through you guys. So starting this week, I'm going to be calling you guys and setting up focus classes that'll be 30 minutes long. Starting this week, I'm going to do a different focus class once a week for 30 minutes on a different gift that one of you have. So I'm going to do a focus class on the people who are called to be pastors, a focus class on evangelism, a focus class on discerning of spirits. So if you can come to all the classes, it doesn't matter to me, but they're more going to be geared to those who are growing in those spiritual gifts. So we're going to do focal classes, and we're going to help you go through your monthly assignment and things like that. So I'm very excited to start that so that we can get rolling and some of y'all can really turn loose, because I can't wait for some of y'all to get set loose and really start ministering. Any questions? Anybody, any questions at all before we close out?
No, not for me.
Any last minute comments?
How do I sign up to be on the list to attend your teachings?
Okay,
I
have your email. I'll send you an email. Or
Okay.
I'll do it, because I know my admin person got a lot on their plate right now. So I'll send you an email so you can sign up.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else got anything? I'm happy today, y'all. We are diversified today. We are diversified.
What happened to the African guy?
I don't know. I haven't been able to contact him. So he wasn't really, as far as I know, he had an overseer already. And that was a long story. He already had an overseer. He was really under somebody else. So but he wanted to be under me. And I'm like, you can't, it's like being a member of 2 separate churches. But I've been trying to contact him for at least a month and a half. So he's just dropped from Facebook. I've emailed. I didn't call because that costs a lot of money. So I haven't called yet, but I thought about calling the other day. So, but I don't know how much it's going to cost to call to Kenya, but I don't know. So
Maybe he's on WhatsApp.
yeah, he probably is. So that's
You
actually
could do WhatsApp.
his
Yeah, and
number.
I have friends in Nigeria now. It's a whole long story, so I'll catch up with you. But I love road trips. And so, you know, I'm just saying, if you like a shotgun person or whatever the phrasing is to go to Ohio, let me know.
All right. We heard we got Kat on board to go to the whole.
Yeah. Like, what is your role? I'm a follower. I'll just follow Pastor Tawanda because I don't want the spotlight. I like doing stuff in the background as long as people aren't wigging out on me.
I love you guys. I really appreciate you allowing me to be your pastor for your teaching. I don't know, I don't know who has a church that they go to. I'm not really concerned about that. But the fact that you're allowing me to teach you means a lot to me. It means that you have confidence in God and that you trust that God is teaching me and that my teaching is legit and is spirit led. I'm very excited about that. So probably Thursdays. Are Thursdays good for everybody to do our focus class? If I'm doing a focus class, is Thursday good or Wednesday good? What's good for you guys? Because I don't want to schedule something. You'd be like, oh, Thursday's not good. Oh, Wednesdays.
What time? Throw out a time because I'm booked on this Thursday. I'm mentoring someone. It's a long story.
Okay. So it's well, you'll wind up going through the process of doing the spiritual gifts. So everybody has their spiritual gifts because they did the questionnaire. So according to the spiritual gifts, I have focus groups for for certain spiritual gifts that people have. So that's what I'm gonna be doing. So if your spiritual gift was prophecy, 1 week I'll have my focus group on prophecy. But if that's not your spiritual gift, you probably wouldn't come. So that's more what the focus group is. So I don't know which group is going to be this week, but I'm trying to gauge times and days that people are available. And I kind of want to do it in the middle of the week so it won't be back to back. I'm trying to give a filler for end of the week. So once we get into our next class, after this class, this will be our Sunday, pretty much our Sunday teaching, but I also want to start a midweek service where I just do different lessons, like regular Bible study lessons that are different from discipleship. So that's what I'm really trying to move to in the coming months. Just to have our Sunday afternoon discipleship class and a Tuesday night or a Wednesday night Bible study. I'm really trying to get to that. Plus our focus group that'll be different each week for different people and different gifts. I know it seems like a lot, but I'm telling you, I don't want you guys to get bored with anything. I want to give you as much as I can to fill you and to really discuss a lot of different things. That's more than discipleship. So y'all let me know. Text me some days and times that you like, and then we'll come to a consensus in our group chat. Just text the group chat. Oh, Wednesdays at 8 are good for me, or Tuesdays at 5. Just text the group chat and we'll go from there. So I think that's it. I don't want to go over the time. I'm already over the time. It's already 6:32. All right, time for me to shut up. If you got questions, call me, email me, text me. All right. Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart. James, you got something to say?
No, I was saying all right.
Okay. Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight. Oh Lord, my strength and my redeemer. God bless you all. And I look forward to hearing from you all this week.
All right.
Later.
See ya.
Everybody.
Bye, everybody.